So last night, I watched Wednesday, Season 2, Part 1, and this show is just such a good time. I feel like I'm having just as much fun as I did with Season 1. And while we wait the 4 weeks for the rest of the season, there's a very important matter I believe deserves some investigation and analysis. Wednesday's vision of Enid's death. Breaking down every moment of that vision and determining if it's true, how it relates to Season 1, what it tells us about the rest of Season 2, and how it very likely ties in with Wednesday's aunt, Ophelia. Hope you enjoy the video. So before we get into the meaning of this vision and what it means for the future of the show, I think it's best to first simply debrief and describe what exactly happened in Wednesday's vision about Enid's death. So basically, the vision happens twice, once at the end of episode 1 and a second time at the beginning of episode 2. So let's start with the first one. At the end of episode 1, after Wednesday makes a mockery of the pyre ceremony and abandons the event, Enid chases her down to hopefully bring her back. As soon as she grabs Wednesday's shoulder, Wednesday taps into the vision with the black tears streaming down her face. She awakens in a cemetery with crows everywhere. She then sees Enid's tombstone, which reads, "In memory of Enid Sinclair, beloved daughter and sister." And there's a crow standing on top of the tombstone with a white rose in its beak. As the crow drops the rose out of its beak onto the ground, we hear in the background in Enid's voice, "This is all your fault, Wednesday. This is all your fault. I died because of you." And finally, Wednesday turns around and Enid appears with blood over half of her face, grabbing Wednesday by the neck, screaming, "I died because of you." This wakes Wednesday up and the episode ends. Now let's move on to the second instance of this vision, in the literal next scene of the show, the very start of episode 2. We're in the cemetery again, and we see a close-up on a bird's eye blink. We then hear Enid's voice scream, "Wednesday, hurry." And like the last vision, "This is all your fault." We see the crow on top of the tombstone again, who again drops the white rose. This time, the rose shatters on the pavement. We see a close-up on this hooded figure statue as we hear Enid scream again, "I died because of you." Wednesday then wakes up from this nightmare vision on the couch with her mother, Morticia, again with the black tears stained across her face. Okay, so having just described exactly what happened in each of those visions, I want to get into the meaning of each moment and how it relates to what we've seen in the show, and how that tells us what we'll likely see in the future. So I want to start with the close-up of the bird's eye blink. We've actually seen this symbol before in Season 1, Episode 1, when Wednesday sees images relating to the finale of Season 1, her battle with Crackstone. When Wednesday bumps into Rowan at the fair, she has a vision of his death, but also catches a glimpse of the prophecy in the Nightshade's book where the tree and statues are burning and have fallen down in the school courtyard. At the time, it reflected the belief that Wednesday would be the demise of Nevermore, specifically burning it all down. However, as more clues were revealed, we learned it was actually prophesizing her battle with Crackstone, where she would actually be the one to save the school. And that initial vision was accompanied by the bird's eye blinking. Of course, this bird's eye is specifically a raven's eye, representing that Wednesday is a raven psychic, which signifies the dark nature of Wednesday's visions, often reflecting death, suffering, and evil. Unlike her mother, who was a dove psychic, with much more positive premonitions. So ultimately, what I'm saying here is, while some of Wednesday's visions are perfectly accurate, telling us the exact events that happen in reality, some of Wednesday's visions serve more as symbolic prophecies that can be distorted by her emotions and misinterpreted by her limited knowledge at the time of the vision, like that one we saw in that very first episode of the series. Morticia even says at the beginning of episode 3, "As a fellow psychic, you understand your visions are unreliable and open to many interpretations." So surely, similarly to the first vision, there will be elements of this vision that are completely correct, but also elements that are warped by the intensity of Wednesday's current emotions, trauma, and fears. So having said all this, let's go through the rest of the vision. The crows signify the very real imminent danger of Judy Spenegal, who we now know is running the lowest program inherently from her father who started it, Augustus Stonehurst, creating outcasts by experimenting on outcasts and normies. The terror and evil Judy has cast over Nevermore and Jericho we are already witnessing with the crow attacks, killing Galpin, his private investigator, and almost killing Thing. The inevitable presence and reign of Judy looms over the school and town as the statue of the hooded figure symbolizes in the vision. And the crow dropping and shattering the white rose symbolizes Wednesday's fear of Judy potentially killing her best friend Enid. White roses are known to symbolize purity and innocence, and Enid has clearly demonstrated a pure heart and innocent character, only putting that innocence aside when saving her best friend as a werewolf. Enid even sort of resembles a white rose with her thin frame, fair skin, and wavy blonde hair. I surely expect there to be a situation where Enid's life is greatly threatened by Judy and she cries for Wednesday's help, as we literally hear in the vision Enid crying out, "Wednesday, hurry." But to me, the most interesting visual is the blood coming from Enid's face. The blood seems to be spread across the right side of her face, coming from her right eye. An extremely subtle resemblance to Judy's one-eyed crow we see throughout the series, with a blind right eye and redness covering the right side of its head. Do I think this foreshadows that Enid is secretly the one-eyed crow and is working with Judy? No, not at all. But I think it's just a symbolic manifestation of Wednesday's fear of Judy, her one-eyed crow, and the threat they pose to her closest friends and family, most notably Enid, as well as the guilt that would haunt her if anything tragic were to happen to Enid. Guilt is an emotion we've seen the most of in Wednesday, who generally, very clearly, isn't very expressive. A great example of this would be her regular visits to Eugene's bedside in the hospital in season 1, after feeling like she failed to stop Tyler's attack on him. So overall, I think this vision is half prophecy of what is to happen and half symbol of Wednesday's current emotions. Enid's life will be threatened by Judy, but the outcome of her death won't come to fruition and Wednesday will save her. And a huge thing I want to highlight is I think this show leaves a massive hint at how Wednesday will overcome these fears and alter the reality of this vision. And here's what that hint is. Once Wednesday wakes up from that nightmare, the second version of the vision, Morticia clarifies to Wednesday that the black tears indicate an overuse of the visions. Wednesday believes she's harnessed it with the help of Goody Adams as her guide in season 1. But Morticia has a very telling response. She says, "This isn't something you can control. You have to be patient and wait for your new guide. They will appear when the time is right." So in this season, I strongly believe Wednesday will have a new guide to help her regain control of her visions and lose the black tears. And who will that guide be? The woman we keep hearing Morticia reference, who suffered many of the same consequences Wednesday has. Ophelia From, Morticia's sister. So let's talk about everything we've learned about Ophelia From in this season to predict how she will become Wednesday's guide in the rest of season 2. We learn from Morticia that Aunt Ophelia is a raven psychic like Wednesday, seeing visions of the past and future through a darker lens of death, tragedy, and suffering. During her sophomore year at Nevermore, she pushed her psychic powers too far and was found screaming in agony with black tears running down her face, spiraling into madness. We see in her journal images of a woman screaming with black tears running down her face, with the handwriting reading "black tears" repeatedly across both pages. Her mother had her committed to Willow Hill Psychiatric Hospital, and suddenly she went missing for 20 years, and still she hasn't been found. So when Wednesday sneaks into Willow Hill with Uncle Fester, and we learn from Judy that Lois is a program where they've been faking deaths and disappearances to experiment on outcasts and normies, it's very likely that the woman in the cell who Wednesday specifically saves is Ophelia. Morticia also highlights how similar in personality Ophelia and Wednesday are, and the first thing we hear from the woman is, "Are you here to kill me?" And when Wednesday says, "No," she then says, "Then leave me alone." I really feel like that's so something Wednesday would say if she was in the same position. And now that Fester has freed all the prisoners and patients, Wednesday would likely reconvene with this woman and have her as her guide. However, I must admit, the only hole in my theory is this line we hear from Morticia in episode 5 of season 1. "If I could help you, I would, Wednesday, but we're never trained by the living. Someone from our bloodline reaches out from beyond to help us when we're ready." This sadly leads me to believe if this character is Ophelia, she needs to die at some point this season, likely very late in the season. I'm thinking likely as a sacrifice for Wednesday and her friends later on in the show, and then finally, maybe even for season 3, she will then become Wednesday's new spiritual guide like Goody was in season 1. Almost serving as this Sirius Black type figure for the rest of the series for Wednesday, as Sirius did for Harry Potter in Harry Potter. With this new connection, Wednesday will understand the limitations of her powers, how to truly harness them, and how to navigate her visions to keep her friends as safe as possible. Alright, this is my analysis. I'd love to discuss your thoughts and theories, and I'm happy to answer any questions in the comments below. I really wonder how this video is going to age, but theorizing is so much fun, so thank you so much for watching. See you later.